some big updates now coming in with regards to this matter. RTI has now revealed that why India actually rushed through the island issue under Sri Lanka pressure in year 1973 to 74. This is what Indian Foreign Secretary told M. Karunanidhi, that Sri Lanka is putting pressure on India to refer the issue to International Court of Justice, as Sri Lanka knows that it has a strong case or something that supports their stance. Now, Sri Lanka was also putting unrelenting pressure since October 1973 to settle this entire Katchatheevu Island issue by 1973 and then 1974 after Bandhanike's visit to India in January 1974. India said that domestic and external compulsions favoured on expeditious settlement. Very strong pro-Chinese lobby in Sri Lanka, in fact, which is eager to take advantage of any misunderstanding between Sri Lanka, in fact, and India. Going international court would have embarrassed India also in this particular matter. Joining us on the broadcast is CNN News 18's Aman Sharma, straight from CNN News 18's newsroom. Aman, a very good morning to you. If we were to talk about the geopolitical relations between these two nations, this revelation coming in from RTI's side is going to put end to a lot of questions which are being raised from Congress's side, as well as to the questions which were raised by External Affairs Minister yesterday in his press conference as well.
See, Sakshi, the RTI details that we are now putting out make it very, very clear that why was India in such a haste in 1973, 1974 to hand over this island to Sri Lanka. Now, what was the urgency behind it? Why did India rush through the process almost? This is the RTI revealing that when the Foreign Secretary of India, Mr. Keval Singh, went and met Mr. Karunanidhi in 1974 in Chennai, he told him the reasons for this. Number one, if you look at this RTI, it says the Foreign Secretary explained to the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu the relative weakness of India's case for sovereignty over Katchatheevu as compared to that of Ceylon. So the Indian side was already convinced that it has a weak case. The Foreign Secretary is trying to explain to the Chief Minister that there is a relative weakness of India's case against Ceylon, and that is why our sovereignty case is weak and we want to go ahead with this move. If you go further in this document, in fact, more explosive revelations are coming in para 9, where the Sri Lankan side, they say, India is saying that Sri Lankan side being convinced of the superiority of their case and aware of the shortcomings of our case, that means the shortcomings of India case, has maintained a sustained pressure on us to refer the issue to the International Court of Justice for a decision if we cannot settle it bilaterally at an early date. So the Foreign Secretary telling Mr. Karunanidhi that, look, there is sustained pressure from the Sri Lankan side. They are very well aware of the strength of their case and they want this case to be transferred to the International Court of Justice. And India, interestingly, did not want this to go to the International Court of Justice. The Foreign Secretary is explaining that as well. If we go beneath in this document, it says that, the pressure has started rising. Pressure has been unrelenting since October 1973 after the Sri Lankan PM visited India in January 1974. The latest being on 10th 11th, when Foreign Secretary had also come, the urgency of arriving at this settlement by the end of June 1974 was stressed. So the Foreign Secretary here is complaining of sustained pressure from Sri Lanka to settle this issue by the end of 1973, and following the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka's visit in 1974, it is saying the pressure was there to do a settlement by the end of 1974. Further, if we go down, they say that at this stage, Mr. Karunanidhi asked that why can't we keep this matter pending for another 2 years? So the State Chief Minister of the DMK Supremo is asking the centre, why the urgency? Let us keep it on hold for maybe 2 more years. Let us negotiate further. To which the Foreign Secretary says there are certain domestic as well as external compulsions favouring an expeditious settlement. So the Foreign Secretary is further explaining that there are further other conditions. He is saying that there is a strong pro-Chinese lobby in Sri Lanka, which is eager to take advantage of any misunderstanding between India and Sri Lanka by urging them to refer to arbitration or even go to the World Court to embarrass India. So India was also under pressure that there are pro-Chinese lobby in Sri Lanka which is pushing the government to take it to the International Court of Justice. That could be embarrassing for India because India is itself admitting that it has a weak case. It also said that the present stage where the relations with Sri Lanka are cordial, it is better to settle it now rather than delay it. So India was even not ready to delay the process by 2 years as Karunanidhi wanted. They wanted it to be settled there and then in 1974. He also said further, in this stage, he's saying that then the Karunanidhi asked, why not take it to the International Court of Justice? What is the problem? We can go to the International Court of Justice. India then said we want to avoid that arbitration in principle because in light of our experience in the past, like Kashmir in the Security Council or an arbitration in Kutch or recently the question of hijacking of an Indian plane to Pakistan, when this went to an international court, it did not come in the favor of India. India said that is why its recent experience with international court is not good. We do not want to take it to the International Court of Justice. And this line, in fact, is very, very significant, which says world opinion tended to side with a small against a big country, and an adverse government would deprive of the advantages that might be secured by bilateral political negotiations. So India was already had predetermined that the International Court of Justice may decide in the favor of Sri Lanka. That is why we don't want to go to the International Court of Justice. India itself admitting that it has a weak case. So we were starting from a position of a weak case, and we were complaining. We were telling Mr. Karunanidhi that there is unrelenting pressure from Sri Lanka to settle it by the end of 1973 and then by the end of 1974. Questions will arise after this RTI revelations that why was India under so much pressure from a smaller country like Sri Lanka to settle this issue in such a speeded up manner that by the end of 1974 we had ceded our rights over Katchatheevu.
Right. Also, Aman, since you mentioned a very crucial highlight in that particular document, and in fact, we also told this to our viewers, that India was actually trying to protect themselves from going to the International Justice Court just to prevent themselves from the embarrassment. Apart from that, the other highlight in this particular document is that the pressure of China, because they could have taken advantage of any sort of misunderstanding between Sri Lanka and India, siding to which yesterday only CNN News 18 managed to have a conversation with the first petitioner in this entire saga. He said that China is actually trying to lease out the island also. Looking at that, what significance does this island at the Pork Strait hold at this point of time, and how are our relations with Sri Lanka going to hindered because of this entire tussle coming at the limelight?
See, at that time, Sakshi, if we look, India's priority, if we look at this RTI reply, seems to be that we want to safeguard our good relationship with Sri Lanka. We can afford to give up this island. It is not of much importance, as Jawaharlal Nehru said. We can give up this small piece of island as long as the bilateral relationship with Sri Lanka is preserved, because we don't want China to take advantage of the situation. That is the reasoning that Indian government has cited in this particular RTI to rush this matter in the end 1973, early 1974 to hand over Katchatheevu to Sri Lanka, not take it to the International Court of Justice, because India was that time, the Congress government was worried about the embarrassment it would cause if it would loses the case there, because inherently India thought it has a weak case in the matter. So India is admitting, in fact, for prejudging it, that it has a weak case in the matter. Presently, if we see, the weights, the controversy has played out since then is that fishing rights in that area are of Sri Lanka. Whenever Indian fishermen wade into those waters, they are arrested, their boats are seized. It's a perpetual issue, and now the DMK has been telling the Congress to retrieve that island. That retrieving that island is also very, very difficult now, because the agreement is a closed loop. You can't unilaterally withdraw from that international agreement, bilateral agreement, because you need Sri Lanka's consent also to it. You cannot do that, and Sri Lanka, of course, is not going to consent to it. So there's little I think the government can do now. But what the RTI is revealing now, that at that time, the Indira Gandhi government had a lot of options about this issue, but it chose not to exercise them, not go to the International Court of Justice, but settle it bilaterally, and bilaterally also settled, in which many, the BJP is now saying it totally in the favor of Sri Lanka.
Right. And Aman, if we were to talk about the sentiment on the ground, do we have any reaction coming in from Sri Lankan government over this entire saga that has come to the fore in India?
Well, not so far, Sakshi. Only a Sri Lankan minister, I have read a comment today, the Sri Lankan minister said that India has not officially raised this matter with Sri Lanka so far. So officially it has not been raised, but politically, yes, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said it from the floor of the parliament last year, and now he is mentioning it in his political rallies, that the issue has become political, and India is actually, Narendra Modi is trying to put the Congress and the DMK both in the dock for being hand in glove, as this RTI is showing, together agreeing to hand over Katchatheevu to Sri Lanka. And though Mr. Karunanidhi did ask a few questions saying can't we delay it by 2 years or not, but he was ultimately convinced by the centre's argument that, in principle, he gave his agreement to the entire thing.